Tim, you're on. Go ahead.
Okay. Uh, I know a lot of us are old enough to remember way back when it was wire screening and plaster and you dyed your sawdust green. Fortunately, things are a lot better nowadays for making scenery. Woodland Scenics is a godsend. Their whole system of the various foliage and colors and everything else is really great. And they've gotten into this styrofoam business pretty well. We'll talk later about what kind of tools are available. I'm just going to start right in and show some pictures to start with. I didn't really know much about styrofoam. I was busy working anyway. I didn't know much about styrofoam until I got into it after retiring again in '95. I joined the Prince William Model Railroad Club and the Modular Club. And then in 2005, I switched over to the Potomac Module Crew. So for about 25 years now, I've been building modules. I've built or cut the parts for 60 some modules. I had 16 or 18 of my own. Here's a picture. Here's a picture. Is that showing pretty big for you guys? Martin is showing full screen for me.
Yeah.
Now I'm showing various members. Can you see that picture pretty well, folks?
It's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's good.
Okay, that's a module, a narrow module, and that's 25 years old, that module. And that's probably one of the first ones I used styrofoam on. If you look up at the top, you can see that it's maybe 2.5 inches tall. And it's really designed to keep trains from going over the edge when they derail on the corner. Now the track works pretty good, so trains don't derail on that corner very much, but just in case. Here's the other end of the same module. Again, over to the right side and a little bit to the left is a little bit of a hump. And in the middle, if you only have a 6 or 8 inch or 10 inch span, you don't really have to worry about the trains going over much, but that's where I began. I later moved into something a little bigger. I was doing something called Narrow Gauge World. This was a set of 5 modules. How's that? Is that clear? Can you see it? Yeah, set of 5 modules. Around the back, you can see some brown paper. That's before styrofoam. But there's a pink blue beehive sitting back there in the center. That's the raw styrofoam before anything else has been done to it. And down on the lower level here, there were 2 modules and then a bridge around the back, that slot in the center. There was a shelf around there. So I had a loop, narrow gauge loop going around behind. And then I had a upper level back where that pink beehive is. I've since gotten rid of, I gave 2 of these modules away. I chopped 2 of them up with a chainsaw and I kept one, the one that I don't have a picture of. It's got the turntable pit in it. And I kept that and I made a lake out of that and made a module. This is what, and I don't know how clear this is. It wasn't taken in good light. There you can see the beehive. After it's been covered over, you know, with Sculptamold material, the whole thing's about 16 inches high. And there are a lot of people that have got mountains on their modules that are that high. They tend to be lift-off things. If you're going to do it at home, if you're going to use a lot of it, it's good for lift-offs. If you need to have an access hatch somewhere, either a mountaintop that lifts off or something that swings down below a lake. On the Prince William layout at Quantico before they tore it down, we had a drop down access hatchback in an area there that was a lake. And doing the styrofoam all around the edge of the lake makes it really easy. Here's a view from the back. This is, I set up all these modules in the living room for my grandkids. This is a long time ago. But if you look off my right elbow there, you can see the plywood that was used to build that upper level up. It was solid plywood under everything. And then I built styrofoam up and then Up here is a liftoff. Let me get back over here. The beehive is in there behind me. There were 3 liftoffs on these 2 modules and five tunnels and 3 bridges. And here's the bridges and a front view. And you can see there back to the left, maybe not as well on that one. It's easier to see on this one. You can see that dark line in there. I wasn't very careful about making a liftoff seam there. You know, you don't want very sharp edges when you're carrying these pieces around to and from shows. The sharp edges tend to break, and I didn't care. I was going to put bushes along there and hide it a little bit. But let me show you one thing right now. Should anyone be considering doing a liftoff like that, piece of styrofoam, and here's one of the tools I'm going to show you a little bit later. It's a hot wire tool. If you take your layer, it's going to be the liftoff. You can cut any kind of weird shape on there. This was raggedy because I was just in a hurry, but you can make it wavy, and you have a hair thin line there. You can conceal that line very easily. A few bushes and some rock carvings and stuff like that. You'll never even know it's there. I've seen guys that have made liftoffs where they've done this, and you don't know it's there. I mean, 6, 8, 10-inch high things on top of foot-high things. You don't even see them. So I thought I'd show that early while I was talking about the liftoffs. The styrofoam, it's not very toxic, but you will make a little bit of fumes cutting it, depending on the tool especially. And when you sand it, you'll make sawdust that's nasty stuff. It gets all over everything. I don't recommend sanding it with anything other than very coarse sandpaper, 40 or 60. That makes big pieces of sawdust, and you have a vacuum handy. You can suck it up as you go, and it doesn't get all over the place. Let's look at the tools. This first tool that I've already used is from the Hot Wire Foam Factory. It's a little power pack. It's got a knob. Turn it off, turn it on. You can set it to different temperatures. Come on, back in here. Got to get used to which way's right and left. You can set it to different temperatures. This is a nice tool. As you saw, it cut pretty fast. And it's a slingshot in shape. It'll go, you know, 3-4 inches in. You can cut things 3 or 4 inches wide with it, and it cuts pretty fast. You won't waste a lot of time with this. And there we are, 2 pieces. I found that I was going to be cutting so much of this stuff that Hot Wire Foam Factory makes some pretty nice stuff, and it's pretty expensive. I needed something like a jigsaw. What is this thing over here? I needed something like a jigsaw. So I went out in the garage and I found a whole bunch of scrapped wood, an old piece of shelf, some 1x4s on the ends, 1x4 at the end, some pipe. And in the center here is a piece of the wire from the Hot Wire Foam Factory. And this is about 1 foot wide. It's about 1 foot wide. And when you buy a sheet of this styrofoam, 4x8, and you need to cut it, you know, you can put a piece of wood on here, clamp it on from either side, make a fence. And you can cut whatever you want, from 1 inch wide to 3 inch wide, on up to, in this case, almost 1 foot wide. and no problem getting 2 inches up in there. 2 inches is about the thickest you'll find. I haven't tried it, but I think this has got a plug, and I'm going to plug it in and just run a piece through there for kicks. I haven't tried it, but I think a power pack, a regular train power pack with some wires with clip-on wires attached here and to the other end of the wire, there's a bolt underneath that holds it on. If you clip the power pack onto this, I think that might be enough power to do the job. Otherwise, oh, what is it doing? Trying to embarrass me? No heat coming through that. So come undone. Wiggle wires. Yeah, something came loose underneath. I probably haven't used this in 10 years. I only did this back when I was cutting, and I've got a whole pile of leftover 2x2 pieces of foam out in the garage. But if anybody was going to cut a lot of this, the Woodland, not the Woodland Scenics, the hot wire foam factory thing cost a couple $100. It will do the same thing as this. This didn't cost anything, except maybe the plug that I went out and bought for a couple of bucks to plug it into the power pack. But if anyone was wanting to do a lot, this is something you probably ought to have. You can do it with the just the little guy, the slingshot, as I call it. There's another tool that came out. The hot wire foam factory's been around for 30 years. They work with artists and craftspeople. Here's another tool that came out. This is called the Tippi, T-I-P-P-I. It comes with 3 different shaping heads. That narrow one over on the side, you can cut narrow grooves with it. The others are designed to cut wider things. Any of those, if you turn them this way, they'll cut a narrow slot. And this also comes with a, you have to buy it separate. It comes with a jigsaw type frame and extra wires, and that they go into the handle. And you can cut deeper and make wider pieces with it. This one smokes a little, but it's instant on, instant off. You press a button and the heat comes on, and away you go. And if you want to cut a narrow slot, if you work down closer to the handle, it's hotter. If you work out further, it's not as hot. If you want to gouge,
Yeah.
you know, you can gouge and get grooves in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took a little piece and I did some carving. I haven't used this tool for that much, but I did some nasty little nothing carving. And if you use the straight one, not this looped one. This looped one, you have to hold it and go edgewise. But you can do all kinds of gouging and popping loose of stuff, and you can make all kinds of rock strata. You hit that with some sandpaper afterwards, or you take a razor knife and you cut pieces of it out, pop them loose so that you get more definition, and you can, with practice, you can make some fairly decent rock with it. I have seen people that have done that. It's not as fine as plaster, and it doesn't work as well as something I've done instead using texture paint, but you have that capability. And like I said, practice with any of this stuff, practice first before you go do anything on the layout. So that's a Tippi tool. Attaching this stuff together, back in the early days, we used epoxy. 5-minute and 15-minute epoxy. You don't need to cover the whole sheet. If you're going to stick these two pieces together, you don't need to cover the whole thing. If you were to just go back and forth with the epoxy, cover just a quarter of it or a third of it, squeeze it together and weight it, books or bricks. If you use bricks, be careful. I was doing this one time and I dropped a brick on a brand new turnout that never had a train run over it, dented it to the point I had to throw it away. But weight it for a little while to squeeze it out and hold it in place. And the epoxy, if you get a thin enough layer in there, you can cut it with these hot wires. It's not much tougher than the styrofoam. Something new that's come out is the hot glue gun from Woodland Scenics. And I think that's probably the best way of all. They didn't have the hot glue guns, and the only hot glue gun I had at the time was a heavy duty one for gluing wood. And if you put that on the styrofoam, it would just melt right in. It would go in 1/4 of an inch before it cooled off. So it wasn't workable. I since bought a small, tiny little hot glue gun. And I just went out and used it. I used that on wood too. I went out and used it on this. I glued together just 3 little scrap pieces of the foam with the smaller hot glue gun. It did not melt down into the foam as bad. And I tried not to keep it in one spot. I just zipped it around. Again, you don't need to cover very much of it. And then squished it down, and I'm breaking it loose now. That little piece, you see the size of that little piece, come on. That came off easy. Now this bigger piece, that's not coming off. I broke a corner where there was no glue. I broke a corner where there was no glue off a little, tiny little piece, but the rest of it is on there to stay. So I'm thinking that it's in terms of speed and cheapness, that those glue sticks have got to cost less than epoxy. I'm thinking this hot glue gun is the way to go to put this stuff together. When you glue it down to the plywood underneath, same thing. It's probably best to do that. I found that you could even use a little white glue back then. I didn't use epoxy because gluing it to wood, it stuck a little better, but white glue will not dry. I saw the N-Scale guys one time cut open a mountain that they had on the layout. They used to do demonstrations. They cut up a mountain that was over a year old, and it was about that big. So maybe 8 inches across by a foot long. And it was still wet. They used white glue. It was still wet down in the center over a year later. It dried in from the outside enough to hold the styrofoam in place. It'd be like icing on a cake, drying in from the outside. If you had a year-old cake, it would probably be solid on the outside, but you might find it wet on the inside. The hot glue is the way to go. Okay, where are we? It's time to show the thing I use for the clinics I've done at various shows and conventions. I call it my corn on the cob demo piece. And unfortunately, it's kind of big, so it doesn't, we may have problems. All right, here we are. It's all just pieces on a sheet of plywood. This very first part here is no contouring at all, just cutting slabs and gluing them together up to the first black line. The second one is taking the Hot Wire Foam Factory slingshot device and carving some curvature into it. Can you see that? Are the shadows showing it?
Yeah.
Third one here is sanding it. Like I said, using a very coarse sandpaper. By the way, if you want to, you can get knives that cut styrofoam. Woodland Scenics makes them and others. I'm sure it's slow and messy. It's like the guys that used to use steak knives, to cut the stuff. If you're only going to do a little bit, that would probably be okay. But if you're going to do more, I think this is the way to go. So you sand it, and you have in here still some seams. And that's when you get to the next stage where you use that good old stuff, Sculptamold. You all know what Sculptamold is?
Yes.
Yeah, I got a bag of it here. Anybody want to see a picture? No, what it is plaster with paper mache mixed in with it. And it's great stuff. You just mix it up and glom it on there with your hands. It doesn't matter if it's got, marks on it. You can smooth it with a wet paintbrush after you just glom it on there. So use that to fill in any of these things, and to fill it between the wood base and the bottom. Sculptamold is great for making 1/4 inch high stuff anyway. If you have a field that you want to make roll, I'm sure you've all used it for that. You just glom a few handfuls of it here and there and smear it around, and you no longer have total flatness. Okay, and the wall's going to get in the way. The next step is texture paint. Used on the modules. I don't know if you'd want to do this at home, but at home, if you're going to use this styrofoam anywhere near the edge of the layout where maybe it's going to get banged up, it might be good. But on the modules, the texture paint doesn't even dry for like 4 or 5 years. It stays slightly flexible. It's got the sand in it. It's got chopped up fiberglass in it, and it's quite good. I mean, you can whack it for years, and it might chip a little bit. I didn't do it here, but towards the end, I started mixing cheap tempera paint in with it, black and tan, mixed it in, made various shades of gray and tan for the texture paint. There's one thing about the texture paint that we'll see at the end of this that I'll show you why I like to use it for the modules. This next part here is just the more texture paint covered with Woodland Scenics green undercoat and brown undercoat. Brown undercoat down the bottom, green undercoat. Just slop it on there, mix it and mosh it. And if you're going to cover it with ground foam, you're ready to go. Like I said, if you've tinted the texture paint, you don't even have to worry about chipping it for many years. And then I'm going to turn this around and show it to you. No, I'm not. I'm going to move the computer, turn the screen so I can get it in over here on this side.
Nice.
Okay, now I don't know how well that shows. It looks pretty dark to me, but that is texture paint put on thick. Plaster sets. The Sculptamold and plaster will set in whatever, 15, 20 minutes. Gets pretty hard in a half hour. And you can carve the plaster. It is kind of brittle. If you put the texture paint on and you lay it on there with a putty knife, 1/4 inch thick or so, it'll run because it dries. It doesn't set. It takes several hours to dry. But if you're doing something else, to keep busy, you put it on there, and you go back every once in a while and you keep pushing it up as it runs down the hill. And after a while, it gets a skin on it. It starts to dry, and you'll actually have a skin. And that's the point at which you can go back and forth, push it up, push it down, make thinner, thicker spots, pop a little out, and it makes a half decent rock. Maybe not for right up front on a layout, but for modules where people are really looking at trains, more than the scenery, it's way more than enough. And again, I made this thing many years ago, and I only see one little ding on it, and there are a couple little dings over here, but on this rock part, and should you get a ding, a little paintbrush or some white glue and drop some ground foam on there, and you're in business. So I do it, like I said, Woodland Scenics is great stuff, and I don't think I have anything on here more than fine foam and coarse foam. You know, the next step up is the bushes and the undergrowth and the rest of it. You know, you can really do a job with the stuff. And you know, now we have Scenic Express, and the Germans are making a lot more stuff. It's expensive, but scenery is a lot easier to do and a lot prettier nowadays. Any questions about this thing? You know, if we were in the same room, you'd be handling this. You'd be looking at it and running your hands over it. And I think that's really the best way. You know, it's just on a TV screen doesn't cut it.
You talk about the texture paint. Is that something you buy or have to mix yourself?
Oh, no, the texture paint, that's one thing about it. It's cheap. 2 gallons of texture paint was like $20 when I bought it many years ago. And I doubt that it's much more expensive now. And it comes in a big bucket, and you need a power stirring tool on a drill to get it stirred, because it's pretty heavy stuff with the sand and the stuff in it. They don't like to run it on their machines at Home Depot, because every once in a while it'll blow open because it's so heavy and it sprays all over. So one jug I bought, they shook for me, and another one they wouldn't do it. So I had to come home and I had to do my own stirring with the little circular paddle wheel, you know, thing about this big, with you know, little fan blades on it. Chuck it in a drill and just go up and down for 20 minutes, and you'll get enough loose stuff on the top. You know, you don't use more than a quart at a time. So you get enough loose stuff up on the top, you can pour it off or scoop it off, mix the brown or black paint in with it, and then go from there. But that's one of the best things about it. Texture paint is cheap. A lot cheaper than plaster, cheaper than Sculptamold. Any other questions? Okay, and this thing, that the hook on the end here is, when I don't use it, it hangs on the wall over Toy Trains and Collectibles, and they use it to show people, you know, how to do Sculptamold and how to do Woodland Scenics stuff. And I just go get it when I need it. The way things are going, that they may end up keeping it forever. Okay. We talked about how to cut it. We talked about how to attach it together. We talked about how to finish off the surface with all that stuff. Let me look here. I made a couple little notes about what I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, go Googling and look at Hotwire Foam Factory is one. They've got stuff now that's up over $200, the equivalent of my deep throat jigsaw thing over here. They got a little table that swivels and everything, $225 or something like that. They make a whole selection of stuff, and they make something that looks like the Tippy, the green handled thing. And you might want to look there. If you look at the Tippy apparently is sold out. I bought this one at Timonium from Big Mike, if you guys know Mike. I haven't used it that much, but the places I looked, it was all out of stock. But they've got, they're now selling them for about $50. Go to Woodland Scenics. That's the #1 spot. They've got some good video clinics. I don't know when they made them, but I didn't remember seeing them before. They got some good video clinics that just say the same kinds of things I've said and reinforce it. All kinds of stuff, including rock molds and how to get rock, good, real nice rock on top of it. The hot glue gun sells for only about $20. The glue sticks are probably about $6 or $8 for some. They've got a hot wire cutter, a bow type one, like this guy, or like the one that comes as an attachment with the Tippy. They got one of those that sells for like $40 for the cutter, and then the bow is like $10. They also, I saw in there something I didn't know they have foam knives. They look like a big X-Acto knife. I guess they're serrated, and you saw and cut your way through it. But looking at the Woodland Scenic stuff, that's the one site that's, if you do have any interest in using styrofoam, that's the one site that's probably most valuable to you out of anything you might see. Okay, I think, oh, one other thing too, good old tacky glue. You all know about tacky glue? It's Aleene's, ALEENES' tacky glue. I discovered tacky glue. I no longer nail my track down. I haven't nailed track down. I'm talking about hundreds of feet of track. That corner module 25 years ago, I glue it down with this stuff. This is a white glue that's got mixed in with it some kind of like rubber cement. It's not just white glue for wood. You can glue vinyl sheeting with it. It's a craft glue. You can glue metal to wood, plastic to metal, and it's excellent stuff. When I use it for laying track, I just put a couple of beads down on the roadbed, rub the track down with a block of wood so it's good and tight. Let it squeeze out on either side, out in between the tie ends and under the center. And then bulletin board pins, every 4 to 6 inches, 50 or 60 of them on a 6-foot module to hold it in place till it dries. And you can fiddle with it. It doesn't set up for a while. So you can fiddle with it and you can get that track perfect, both horizontally and vertically. I sand my roadbed anyway to get it perfectly flat. But I have found that painting the roadbed gray or brown, whatever ballast you're going to use, that the Aleene's sticks to that paint much better than it does to the cork. And it also, you know, if ballast ever comes up, you have that color showing through from behind. And like I said, 25 years and they've never come loose. And the modules the modules I have here at home, they range back over 20 years. I joined Prince William in '95 and I started making modules. None of them have ever come loose. So I always like to mention tacky glue in case somebody doesn't know about it. And if you're putting trees on and things like that, if you got a fairly good sized tree and you're poking a hole in the styrofoam, that's another good thing about the styrofoam. It's a lot easier to plant trees. Poke a hole with an awl or a screwdriver, shove that sucker down in there with some glue, put a little Woodland Scenic stuff around the bottom, and you're in business. I see a lot of these trees that have got these little round plastic bases and guys glue them onto the scenery and then try and cover them up. That's one thing the styrofoam is really good for, depending on how thick you make it. That's another thing too. When you make anything, you don't have to make it solid. You can hollow it out. That beehive I showed, each layer was only like 2 to 3 inches thick. Inside that thing was a hollow, and you just you cut one layer. For instance, if this was the thing, you cut this maybe into 3 pieces. You go in and you make a cut around like that wide. Okay, then you go in and you make another cut around like that wide. Then you cut a different piece so that it makes an intermediate layer, one that fits out on this and goes in far enough to hold up the next layer. Does that make sense to everybody? You just take turns with 2 separate cuts so that you end up with at least an inch, maybe 1.5 inch overlap for strength, but you can hollow the thing out. You use a lot less styrofoam and it's just a waste of time and money and glue, to have to glue all that together. The things on the modules, that the hand size pieces, or if you were going to do a strip along the edge of the layout, even if it was 2 or 3 inches deep and you wanted a little hill, they're probably not worth hollowing out. They're probably just worth, cutting a slab, shaping the edges, glue it down, forget about it. Okay, I am just about out of steam on this. I think I've pretty much remembered everything there is to remember. Dave Arday, you're out there, right? Dave Arday? Have you disappeared?
Dave,
No, I was muted.
there you go.
I'm muted now.
Yeah, Dave is on the list. I thought he was there. David
I'm
Arday.
here. I was muted.
Oh, there you were muted. Okay. You've you've been a member of the modular groups for a long time, and you used the styrofoam on that one module of yours, right? With the factory up the front and the hill.
Yes, I use styrofoam. Very similar to a lot of your techniques, although I tend to use the bead board because it's cheaper and I can get it. I get scrap. I have used the insulation, the solid closed cell like you got. Well, maybe I'm getting backwards. One's called closed cell and one's called open cell. I think the bead boards, like Woodland Scenic cells, is called the open cell. But yeah, I use that, and then I cover it with Sculptamold. The only thing I haven't tried is the texture paint. That seems like a good idea. If I want rough rock forms, I get by with a Sculptamold. If I want finer, I use drywall mud.
Yeah,
That carves better.
drywall mud and heavy duty spackle of various kinds. I've seen people carve rocks with Stu with that 2 foot high mountain on that one module used some kind of heavy duty spackle, and he carved beautiful rocks, better than I've seen in plaster. It is a little brittle though. That's the only thing.
Yeah,
And the bead board, when you're talking about bead board, the white stuff, that's expanded beads in a mold. And if the beads are very small, that's pretty sturdy stuff. If they're pretty big, that's not that strong. It's good for filling in under the blue and pink stuff. But if there's any chance you're going to bang on it on the outside, it's the blue and pink stuff is probably better. Your module is beautiful, and it's there's nothing on it higher than what, about 5 inches, 6 inches.
well, I think the structure is the highest, but that's probably about six inches at the top. I think the hill's about 5.
Yeah, and the road going up the side.
That's got three layers of probably 3/4, well, 1 inch. No, it's got to be more than that. Maybe 1.5 inch beadboard on it that I did that with. It's pretty much covered. It's pretty much covered with Sculptamold in most places to smooth it out.
Yeah, Sculptamold is great stuff. I didn't know about that way back in the day, but I've certainly used a lot of it in the meantime. By the way, you can pay up to $30 a bag for it if you go to some fancy place. If you go to Walmart and Target, you can get it for $10 a bag. $3 bags, which surprised me because I think I paid $12-14 for mine, the last bag.
It goes a long way, though.
Oh yeah, it does, depending on how thick you spread it. I haven't used, I don't know, I have a bag I haven't opened. I haven't probably used more than two bags on all those modules.
Yeah, I'm on my second bag, and let's see, I've done probably about 30 square feet of scenery altogether. So you get 20 square feet out of a bag, I guess.
Yeah. By the way, I've got about the styrofoam isn't that expensive. I wrote down the cost of it somewhere. I didn't remember. The 2-inch stuff is $40 for a 4x8 sheet. The 3/4 inch is $18 for a 4x8 sheet. And that's an awful lot of styrofoam. Pink or blue doesn't matter. They're both the same color. The beadboard that Dave is talking about is probably half that price. And I've got probably, I don't know, I must have about $30 worth of it sitting around here, which I'm willing to give away to anybody that wants it. If any of you guys want to get some, as Dave said, if you can find scraps, you go to a construction site they throw away little pieces of it that are just perfect for chopping up for model railroads. I've got a bunch. If anybody wants to contact me and drop by and get it, I'll be willing to give it to them. Also, these tools, I'm not going to be doing much with them anymore. There's one guy in the module crew that I think wants some of it, but the other one, the Tippy, I'd be willing to give that to anybody that wanted it out of this group. I live in Manassas, by the way.
And
Yeah.
Mike Niebling, I've got a question about flammability and the fumes that would come. If you were to have a fire in the house or in the layout room and the foam burned, does it give off really noxious fumes? Does
I don't think it,
go well?
yeah, I don't think it would be any worse than a lot of the other stuff you got in the house. You talk about particle board in your kitchen cabinets. You talk about carpet. You talk about the paint on the wall. You talk about any plastic Venetian blinds you've got. I'm sure that all of those would be giving off way more, both in toxicity and in quantity. They'd be giving off way more fumes.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be my guess, and I've taken some chemistry. It doesn't smell real bad. If you were going to do a lot of work on it inside, I'd say open a window and maybe set up a little fan. But I've done most of the cutting outside, but I've worked inside with it, and it's not that bad.
Okay, so it's
You
not.
might want to Google that though, just to make sure how flammable. It's polystyrene. It's basically plastic. It's extruded polystyrene.
Yeah.
Look it up. Ask what kind of toxic fumes come from styrene burning.
Yeah, it's toxic. I mean, like you said, just about everything in the house that burns is toxic, except maybe your papers, unless they're newsprint.
Honestly, if your layout's burning, you probably have other worries.
Yeah.
No, you'll be there trying to put it out while your wife is trying to save all the jewelry and everything else. You'll be putting your layout out.
Yeah. Well,
The fumes that come off from it, yeah, they're toxic too. I mean, the hot wire cutters essentially melt the stuff. I've done cutting with it. I don't do a lot of cutting, so if I do a couple of cuts, I just do them indoors. If I'm going to do a lot of cutting at once, I'll take it outside.
Yeah, or like I said, open a window and have a fan setting up a little cross circulation. It can be all the way across the room, but if you're blowing air out a window from the room you're in, it's going to suck it away from you.
Hey.
gotten really quiet. Any more questions out there?
Well, I was going to ask again about the
Sure.
for tacking down roadbed.
Yeah,
I've
go
used
for
a
it.
little bit of Woodland Scenics foam roadbed, and they sell a foam glue. I forget the exact name of it. Has anybody used that instead of Eileen's or others?
Well, if you're dealing with the phone, I've got nothing to say to you except that I wouldn't get near that stuff. I don't like it. I'm a cork roadbed guy.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. That's
And I
fine.
glue that cork roadbed down with white glue. I rub it down and get it to ooze out all over the place and wipe it off. And that
Yeah.
roadbed, when I've taken it up, it's taken a lot of work with a chisel and a hammer. Then I sand the top. Like I said, I get it very smooth.
Yeah.
And that's what I lay my track on. I've seen guys use the foam, and the foam gives a little too much to my mind. You could probably use the Aleen's, and you wouldn't be tacking it down as hard. Like if you use the bulletin board push pins, you wouldn't be tacking it vertically as much. I shoved them all the way down till the ties are, pressed down. You'd probably use it more for horizontal spacing to get it horizontally exactly where you want it. and let the foam actually push it up, you know, to where the foam wants it to. There you go, foam tack glue.
Yeah.
Forgot
I
about
use,
that.
Yeah,
I use this, and I also use that foam road bed. And I actually laid it on top. I buy the 2 foot by 2 foot squares of the foam insulation at Home Depot. They cost about, I don't know, $5.
yeah.
And since my layout basically consists of a 2 foot wide bench, it fits really quite nicely. And then you can carve it as Tim mentioned, cut it, stack it, whether you can see back there, but
Yeah,
I
that's,
stacked
see it.
it to make spires and hills. And what I've done is I've overlaid it when I was finished with that plaster sheets, which I find absorb paint quite nicely. And then you can scenic it as you wish, to put sand or whatever on top.
Yeah, I looked at that and that works good. But again, it's a lot more expensive than texture paint, which for my purposes did the job, and
Yeah.
it was tougher, you know, for the modules. Since I haven't built a home layout since the mid '70s, a little one in the corner of my son's bedroom with him. You know, I got no home layout, and I'm not going to get to it. So the plaster cloth is, you know, it's part of that Woodland Scenic system, which is beautiful, well done. If you want to spend the money.
I think I've also seen online people that make their own plaster sheets. I think using paper towels, drag through plaster mix, and then
Yeah.
slap it down.
That's good and messy.
Yeah, I don't recommend it.
That's cheaper.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Deafening silence once again. Any more questions? I'm going to take that continued silence to be a no.
No, thanks, Tim.
Yes,
If
thank
you
you very much, Tim.
Yeah, well,
Really
I hope
appreciate
I hope it's given you some ideas. Any of you that were thinking about it, it's not a bad way to go. And those of you that are using it, maybe if you learned a little something, I'm glad. I'm happy.
That's good techniques. People need to learn stuff from one end to the other.
Amen.
Another option for gluing the styrofoam foam board together is this stuff from Home Depot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And make sure what you get is the foam board stuff, because other materials will eat
Yep.
the foam. This does not.
yeah, that's been a boon to be able to buy that, because you know, just a caulking gun, you can squirt down a lot of that real fast to cover a lot of territory.
One issue with the smells and the chemicals, what I would suggest if you were going to use this stuff and worried about it, is do like the Germans do and open the windows up about 10 minutes every day and let all the air, all the nasty stuff out the window and shut it. And that way you get rid of all the chemicals and the formaldehyde and whatever else in the house.
If I can step in, I would highly recommend just using a painter's caulk. I get it at the Ace Hardware store. I don't know, it's $1 something a tube. It's probably the cheapest stuff you can get. But I use it for laying a road bed and track, and for all of the form also. And it's just one tube. You can use it for just about everything. It takes a little longer to dry than your hot glue, but still, you can keep stacking things up and cutting your shapes, and it's easily workable by the next day for sure. Sometimes the same day.
When you use that for like cork road bed, do you have trouble squeezing it out, or do you end up with a fairly thick layer of it under there?
No, you just run a bead along the track, wherever it's going to be, and just use a little scraper or whatever, just thin it out. Just spread it out. You just got a really thin layer.
Get it pretty thin.
Yeah, because you don't want it, like if you're laying track, you don't want it to pop up between the ties.
No, not
So
much.
you've just got just a very, very thin layer. And if you're laying track and stuff, it's especially good because when you squish it down and like when you put the cork down, you can just go right ahead and start laying track because you don't need to pin it down for very long because it's a very thin layer and it dries out pretty quick underneath the cork. And the track takes a little bit longer, so you have to kind of pin the track in, especially if you're doing curves or something. But still, it's pretty dry in a while. But normally, once you glue your track down, you're not doing much else with it for another day or so.
Mm-hmm.
But for the foam, I've had really good luck. Just squish it on there, and you can spread it around if you want. But it gets pretty tacky pretty quick. I put up a thing about Sculpt-A-Mold over here too on the comments if you want. I buy it. This is a 25-pound bag, but it only costs about $2 a pound when you get it that way, and that was shipped from eBay. So
Yeah, it is a lot cheaper in quantity, any of this stuff. Yeah, but how big is your layout that you need 25 pounds of it?
I've probably used 75 pounds.
Oh, jeez.
Well, I have a larger layout in the basement. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I film out west. So it's not that I build huge mountains out of it, but I've got slopes and mountains with rock carvings and stuff on it. So you use a lot of Sculpt-A-Mold to go in there and patch things together and so on.
Yeah, I'm used to building things that are 2 foot by 4 foot. The stuff lasts me a long time. Although when you head it all up, it is a pretty good sized layout. It'd be all the ones I've built probably be like a 40 by 40 layout if I got them all together.
Yeah.
2 foot wide. Which reminds me, Martin,
Yes.
you still there?
Oh, yeah.
If I could, and maybe Dave would like to say something here too. I'd like to give a short plug for modular railroading. The way things are, everybody's now jammed up in the house, working on their own railroads or maybe trying to get together with small groups. If and when we ever get shows back together, if anybody wants to just come by with some trains and run them on the module crew layout, we have no dues, we have no bylaws, we just get together and run trains. And we hand over throttles to members of the public and just let them run our trains. If anybody wants to come by and spend some time at a train show where they get to meet hundreds of people, once it's safe enough to do so, come on by to one of the local shows and even tell them if they're ones that charge money, if you bring an empty train box and tell them you're with the module crew, they won't even charge you admission. We've had a number of people do that, right, Dave?
Yeah, I think so.
But like I said, early on, I don't know how Dave's feeling, but I really miss the train shows. They were a lot of fun in a lot of ways. And it would be great if we could open them up again and get together and see each other and meet new people. And it's just a different kind of thing than running a layout at home or having yourself or having an operating group. And there's no obligation. Like I said, if you just wanted to come and do it for 3 hours, we need pee breaks and lunch breaks. You come in the middle of the day and you can run trains while we go eat. Okay, thank you, Martin.
I
No
definitely
problem.
miss Rockville.
What, Dave?
Tim, I want to thank you for doing this. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
All righty. I think we're close to the end point here. Any more questions? Do we have anything?
Well, I'll put this in that
There you
for anybody who has any grandchildren who might like to introduce to railroading or whatever else, I have a grandson and a granddaughter who are getting Swiss crocodiles from Lego. And they're not too terribly expensive and something to challenge to build and somebody to introduce them to the railroading that he may enjoy doing. So
Huh.
Just a thought.
How big a radius do they need to go around?
Do what?
When you running them on track? Lego track?
I'm not sure what the track is. There's a track with it when you buy it, but I'm not sure what the extra track is available. That I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's the
But it
Lego
isn't-
track is pretty tight and some pretty big stuff, you know, is designed with joints, so it runs around some pretty tight curvature.
Well, it's articulated in two places, and
Yeah, right.
the box is about maybe close to 3 feet long. So it's going to be a big toy. But it is
Yeah.
a way to introduce kids to railroading. It's something you may enjoy doing, building.
If they enjoy doing that, there are several Lego groups in the area, the Lego Train Users Group. They're nothing but trains, and Wamalug is the local group that builds the cities and everything. They have trains and airports and whatever. But the train users, they come to the shows a lot. They come to the Greenberg shows, TSI. They're at the Scout Show over here in Virginia, the Rockville Lions Show, and they set up layouts. And they're a pretty loosely organized group too. If once they get those things up and running, and we start shows again, they could go in and run them on one of those layouts. I'm sure they'd be glad to have them. It's something to run your train around a 20 by 20 layout if you have nothing, you know.
Well, my two grandchildren getting this are 10 years old, so it's
Doesn't matter. They
a challenge for them, but they're both very competent in actually spatial abilities.
yeah, no group's going to want them there unattended. Like we don't allow anybody 10 years old to come without a parent or an uncle or somebody. But if they, we got one mother that brings her daughter and sits there and reads a book while her daughter does whatever she does on her phone. And the 10-year-old son runs trains on our layout. And if he hangs around till he's 18, then he'll be a full member. But other than that, like I said, there's not too much of a concern for liability.
Well, I think that might wrap us up then.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for all coming. I hope it was good.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you also, Tim.
Before you all turn out, we have two additions to the program. I